Hello there guys, welcome back to Easy Tutorials by Dave, and in this video we're going to cover relative and absolute addressing, mixed addressing, the relative and absolute addressing. Now if I just zoom in a little bit, I need to get you to understand what a relative address is and what an absolute address is. Now this here, look, relative address is this here. So when you look at this, it says equals A4. Now what that means is that the column A and the row 4 will change if I copy it across. So the A would go A, B, C, D relative to the column that I'm going across, and the 4 would go 4, 5, 6, 7 relative to the row that is going down. Because it has no dollars in front of the column or the row, it will change, and that's why it's called a relative address. Now if you look at this one is what you call an absolute address. Now what this means is you've got the equals dollar A, so that's the column, so it locks the column in place, and $4 locks the row in place. So if I copied this formula across, it would go A, 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 A. The column wouldn't change because that dollar locks that column in place. Likewise, if I was to copy it down, it would go 4, 4, 4 because the dollar locks the row, so it can't change. Now if we come down here and have a look at this main table here, and if I go in there, notice I'm on A11. Now if I put equals and put that cell reference in there, equals A4, notice this is what we call a relative address. Now if I just accept that, notice it's looking at what's in A4, and there, look, it's Premier, and it comes in there. Now because this is saying equals A4, which you can look up on here, when I copy this column across like here, it'll go A, B, C and D. So let me copy it across for you, and we copy 1, 2, 3, and we let go. Notice in this cell it says A4. In this cell, notice now it's saying B4 because it changes relative to the column. Then over here it says C4, and there it says D4. So that's what we mean by a relative address. It changes relative to the column that we're copying it over to. Now we'll go back to this A11 and notice it's saying equals A4, so it's looking at what's here. Now because the 4 is relative, when we copy it down it will change. So when I'm here and I go down the 3 columns, notice this one is saying A4, so it's giving me what's in A4, which is Premier. Then we come down to this one, which is A5. Now notice 23 is in A5, so it's there. And when we go here, it's A6. You see here, look, A6. And this one is A7. So it changes relative to the row that we're going into. So it just goes down 1 and plus 1 each time. So 5, 6 and 7. Now, when we come into this one here, let's have a little look at this one. Now what we're going to do here, again we're going to say equals A4, but notice it's relative at the moment. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the dollars. Now notice it's got $A, meaning absolute, and it's got $4, which means absolute. So this means column absolute, because that dollar locks the A, and row absolute, meaning dollar locks the 4. So when I copy this across, remember that A is not going to change. So when I copy it across here, it'll go A4, A4, A4 and A4. So all these 3 cells here will look at that one cell A4. So these should all say premier as we're coming across. And now you can see they're all looking, see, at the A4. So they're all looking at this one cell. That one is, look, and that one is. Well, A4, so they're all looking at that one. And this one, when I come down, notice I drag this down like that. And because we've got the dollar in the 4, notice 4, look, it's changed. It hasn't changed because the dollar locks the 4. And that's what we term as an absolute address. And that's the difference between a relative address and an absolute address. A relative will change according to the column that you're going into, or row, where an absolute won't. Everything locks onto that one A4 cell on this cell here. Then what we have is what we call mixed addressing. Now mixed addressing is these here, look. Now this one here is column absolute address. Now what that means is, notice it says equals $A4. The dollar locks the column, meaning when we copy it across, it will go A. But when we copy it down, it'll go 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I come here, look, and I type in there equals A4, now that's looking at A4 over there. Now if I press the F4 key, notice I get the dollars. Can you see it? So it's column absolute and row absolute. If I press F4 again, notice now it's column relative because there's no dollar in front of the A, but there's a dollar in front of the 4, so it makes it row absolute. Do it again, notice it's column absolute because the dollar is front of the A, but it's row relative, meaning the 4 would change if we copied it down, and then back on. So the F4 key toggles between all the addressings. Can you see that? Each time you press the F4, it changes. Now I'm looking for the column absolute, so I need the dollar in front of the column to lock the column. So there's the dollar, there's the A, so that's absolute. No $4, so it will change. Now watch this. When I put a tick on that, notice it's looking in A4, because that's what we're saying, equals A4. But when I copy this across here, notice, because the dollar is in front of A, each one of these cells are looking at that A4. So it's locked the A in position. And that's because the dollar is in front of the A, so it won't change. But when I come to this one and I copy it down, look, notice it's saying again $A4. Now when you copy it down, because there's no dollar in front of the 4, it's relative row, so when I copy it down it goes 4, 5, 6 and 7. So when you look at this one, it is A4, but when you look at this one, 5, so it's looking at this one, and then it goes to 6, which is looking at that one, and then it goes to 7, which is looking at that one. So the row is relative, so it comes down. So when you've got that, it's column absolute. Then we come here and we say this is what we call row absolute. So we say equals A4. Now what we do here, we do the F4 key again. So we do that, but we want the dollar in front of the row. So it'll lock the row in place, but the column is relative. So when I click on that, notice this one is saying equals A, which is relative, $4, meaning it'll lock it when we copy it down. So when I copy this one, because there's no dollar in front of the A, notice I copy it across, it goes A, B, C and D. So when you look at this cell here, look, it's saying A4, so it's looking at this cell here. Then we come over here and notice now it's saying B4, so it's looking at this one here. Then we go C4 and it's looking at this one. And then we go D4 and it's looking at that one, because the row is relative, so it will change when we copy it across. Where when we're on this one, notice if I copy this down, because the dollar is front of the A, notice they won't change. The 4 will lock in place. So $4, this one, 4, this one, 4, and this one 4. So all these cells are looking at that A4 because the 4 cannot change because the dollar's in front of it. And that is your mixed addressing. Now when you look up here, look, these are the little table here, look, this is a little table. Equals A4 with no dollars either side is what we call full relative. So it would change if you go across and down. This one is absolute, full absolute. So it won't change because there's a dollar in front of the column and a dollar in front of the row. So if I copy that across, it go A. If I copy it down, it go 4, 4, 4. These are what we call the mixed addressing. Now that's got a dollar in front of the A, so it locks the A. So it goes A, if we copy it across, A. If we copy it down, it goes 4, 5, 6, because that's relative. Notice this one is a no dollar in front of the A. So if I copied it across, it would go A, B, C, and D, where if I copy it down, it goes 4, 4, 4, and 4, and the 4 locks in place. Now, that's all well and good, and you think, you know, yeah, well, I understand what's that, but why would we want to use it? Now, just let me show you a little thing that we might be able to show you on here. Now, let's imagine that this is our little sales table, and this is my sales force here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, look, and I'm going to set a target of 75. So I put target there and I just put 75 in here. Now here I'm going to put an if statement in, and the if statement, don't worry about the if statement, I'm going to do a video on that all of its own, but just for now I need just to write this if statement. So I say equals if, open bracket. Now if Bob's sales, because I'm only doing Bob at the moment, and he's sales in B4, so I say if Bob's sales is greater than or equals to, and I put the target in, yeah, that's the 75. So if Bob's sales is greater than or equals to 75, if that's true, I want to see commission. And if it isn't true, I want to see no commission. And then I close the bracket and I press enter. And notice Bob has only sold £74, so he gets no commission. Now when I copy this down, okay, and we copy it down like this, notice we put the formula in. Well, they're getting commission because we're over 75. That's getting commission because we're over 75. This one's getting commission, but it's not over 75. So now we've got a problem. Now this is where the problem lies. If you look at this formula here that we put in first, we said equals if B4, which is Bob's sales. Notice that's relative. So when I copy it down, it'll go 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's what we want it to do. But then we say it's greater than or equals to the target, which is K1. But notice that's also relative. So when I copy this formula down here, that's going to go K1, K2, K3, K4, K5 and K6. And notice we've got nothing in them cells. They're all empty. And that's your problem. So when you look at this one here for Jack, notice that's looking at K4. And K4 is currently empty. There's nothing in it. So what we have to do up here, notice we must put the dollars in for the K1. So we do the full dollars. Now, what we do now, when we copy this down now, notice it'll work correctly. Because when you look at this now, can you see that working? So when we look at this now, this one is looking at K1, which is this cell here. This one is also looking at K1. This one is also looking at K1. Can you see it? And that's how it works. So these dollars lock onto one certain cell, so it can't change, because that target will be there all the time. That target cell won't change, and we don't want it to change, because when we come up and I say to you, "Cool, we've had a bad week this week, we better, lower the target," rather than editing all these formulas down here, we just edit that one cell here. So if I drop the sales, let's say I say, "Oh, let's drop the target down to 55 because it was a hard week." I type 55 in there. Now watch here, watch these cells here change. So when I press enter, notice now they're all changing. Well, I'll put it to 50 actually, and then you'll see this one change, because this one's 52. Can you see it, this one? That's same 52. So when I go 50, notice now they get commission. So it's literally, so we can just change one cell. Sales targets use them. VAT rate changes them as well. You could have it on VAT rate and things like that. So you can use this for quite a lot of things that you use. You can use it. Watch this one. I've got a little sheet here, right? Now let's imagine that you've got a little table. This is our January, February, March. It's a little sales forecast that we're going to say. Now we're saying that we're going to sell £600 in the month of January, and we want a 10% increment per each month. Notice 10%, 660, so on and so forth. So each month it's going up by 10%. The cost to sales is 45%. Okay, so it looks at the sales, times it by 45%, and that's 45% cost to sales. But these two are variables. So let's say we say sales inc for increase, and then we'll say cost for the cost of sales. Now the cost of sales was 0.45, we said, didn't we? And the sales increase was 1.1, yeah, 1.10. So we'll put that in there. Now watch this. Let me change this formula here and let me put that cell in there. Now notice it's looking at B23, which is this cell here, this 600, and it's going to times it by B28. Now notice B28 is in here, but do we want this to be relative or absolute? Now when I copy this across here, if I leave this relative, it'll go B, C, D, E and F. And we haven't got anything in these cells, so we need to make this absolute. So we put an F4 key on. Notice now we've got the dollar in front of the row column and the dollar in front of the row. So when I click on that, notice now I copy it across and it goes, and each one of these cells, look, is looking at that B21. They're all looking at that one cell. That's where we're looking for the formula, B28. You can see it, and it's looking at that cell, and that is looking at that cell. Likewise, when we come here and we say, oh, B23, which is the 600, if we times that by 45, now rather than messing about like that, just let's get rid of that 0.45 and let's refer it down to this cell. And again, notice it's relative. So if I copy it across, it go B, C, D. We don't want that. So we put the dollars up. Notice now the dollars up. So that's locked. So this won't change. So all these formulas will look in this one cell. So when I copy it across, notice now it's looking at B29, which is this one. This one is looking at B29, which is that one. This one, B29, which is that one. Can you see it? And it hasn't changed. And that's what we're asking it. We don't want it to change. Then we come to the formula. Now this is the profit formula. I say equals the sales minus the cost of sales. And then notice these are both relative. Now this is looking at January's sales and January's cost. So when I hit the tick, notice it gives us the result. Equals B23 minus B24, which is what we want. But when I copy this over to the February column, I need it to look at C, 23 minus 24. And in March, I need it to say D, 23 minus 24. So when I copy this one across, notice these will be relative, so we want them to change. So that's saying C24, that one's saying D, this one's saying E, and this one's saying F, and this one's saying G. And that one we need to be relative because we want it to change. And that is how you work with the absolute addressing. Now, if I come in now and I say, well, actually, the cost of sales gone up, and it's gone up to, let's say 65%, watch all these figures change when I type in there 0.65%, bang, notice as I press enter there, all these change all straight away. So you're not changing all the formulas and messing about, you are just changing this one cell. I might say, well, actually, the cost of sales down to 33%. So we type in 33%, watch what happens. As I press enter, watch all these figures change. And there you go, look. And it changes so easy. So we're changing one cell opposed to all these cells up here. And I'll just put it back to 45%. Well, that is your relative and absolute addressing. I hope you understand it. I hope you have a little play with it and see what you think. Just remember the relative address is equals therefore no dollars on the row or the column. The absolute addressing has the dollar in front of the column and a dollar in front of the row, so it won't change if you copy it across or down. Then you've got column absolute, which is what we call mixed addressing. The dollar in front of the column locks the column, but the row's relative, meaning if we copy it across, it'll go A. If we copy it down, it'll go 4, 5, 6. And then we've got the row absolute, meaning there's no dollar in front of the column, which will go A, B, C, D, but the column would go 4, 4, 4, 4. And that's your mixed relative addressing, absolute addressing, and mixed addressing. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it, guys. That's all it is for this video. Don't forget, if you like the video, give us a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, you can, and then just drop a line if you get stuck or you want to ask us a question or anything like that. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your time. Bye.